The conference room smelled like antiseptic and synthetic lavender, the kind of fake calm they probably bought in bulk. I sat stiffly in a white leather chair, trying not to let my palms sweat through the silk lining of my blazer. Dominic Rice, the new COO, looked like he'd practiced this 100 times, that blend of forced empathy and efficient cruelty. Next to him, a woman I'd never seen before opened a laptop like she was about to read a recipe, not dismantle my career. Dominic began, folding his hands. You've been instrumental to Eversage's growth over the past 2 decades. That should have been a compliment. It sounded like a eulogy. The HR consultant, Rachel, her name tag read, spoke up, her voice smooth and impersonal. This conversation is part of our broader strategic shift. The board has aligned on a new vision, and unfortunately, your role is not part of that direction. I blinked. Not part of the direction. Vision alignment, Dominic repeated. It's not personal. Except that it absolutely is, I said calmly. My voice didn't crack. Who's replacing me? They hesitated. That told me everything. Rachel adjusted the screen. We're elevating Amaya Lee. I nearly laughed. Amaya, who once asked me how many square feet were in an acre during a zoning proposal review, who submitted a design pitch with a TikTok reference in the title. She wasn't ready, but she was easy, upward managing, eager, photogenic, everything the investors thought next-gen leadership should be. I see, I said. My hands were cold, but my voice didn't shake. Is she aware? She'll be looped in this afternoon, Dominic said, clearly relieved I hadn't thrown a chair. We didn't want any disruption. I understand. He looked surprised. I guess they were expecting me to beg, maybe storm out. But I'd seen how this was coming, not in the specifics, but in the erosion. It started the day we moved into a bigger office and stopped talking about neighborhoods and started talking about market capture. The day someone pitched an NFT-based design concept and no one laughed. I stood up. I'll collect my things. Rachel nodded, already tapping away. I wasn't even out of the room before the exit logistics had been emailed to legal. Walking down the corridor felt like drifting through someone else's life. The walls were lined with renderings of buildings I'd helped create, hotels, community centers, a museum in Austin that made Architectural Digest. I'd given this place my name, my vision, and most of my weekends. Now, all that equity vanished with one phrase, vision alignment. I passed Amaya's desk. Her acrylic calendar still said client mood board in pink marker. I wondered if she even knew what was coming. Or maybe she did. Maybe she'd been promised this for months. At the elevator, I looked back once. No one noticed me leaving. On the street, the wind hit my face hard. The city didn't care what had happened upstairs. People were still rushing, the subway still rumbling below. But I stood frozen for a second. It wasn't just my job they'd taken. It was my vocabulary, my mornings, my meaning. I'd been a part of something. Until suddenly, I wasn't. And in that quiet moment, I realized I hadn't just been let go. I had been surgically removed. The light in my apartment was cold and too bright. Floor-to-ceiling windows had once felt expansive, but now they made the place feel exposed, like I was on display. I kicked off my heels by the front door, their sharp clatter bouncing against the polished concrete floor. I had always loved this space. The furniture was curated, every piece intentional. Matte black wood, cream upholstery, brushed brass accents. It was clean, elegant, minimal. But now, it just felt hollow, like I had designed a showroom instead of a home. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine, an aged Barolo I'd been saving for something meaningful. I didn't care anymore. I stood by the island, glass in hand, staring at the fridge. The only thing on it was a magnet from the Eversage Austin project, a sketch of the atrium I had pushed for against the board's value-engineered alternative. I took a sip. It burned in a good way. I didn't cry. That was the strange part. I kept waiting for the collapse, for some tidal wave of grief to knock me off my feet. But it didn't come. Just a quiet ache in my ribs. Just stillness. I drifted to the living room and sat on the sofa, tucking my legs beneath me like I used to after long days at the studio. I glanced around. The place was pristine. No kids, no mess, no loose socks or TV remotes. It had always made me feel in control. Tonight, it felt like a museum. I pulled out my phone and opened LinkedIn out of habit. There it was. Amaya Lee, Chief Creative Officer at Eversage Design Group, posted 4 hours ago. Honored and excited to step into this next chapter with the incredible team at Eversage. Grateful to those who've supported me on this journey. Let's build the future, one bold line at a time. I stared at the post for a long time. My thumb hovered over the comment button. I didn't press it. I closed the app and set my phone face down on the coffee table. It hit me then. Not the termination, not even the replacement. It was the realization that they hadn't fired me today. They had been erasing me for months, slowly, quietly, like white paint rolled over bold color. The meetings I was suddenly excluded from. The young hires who stopped looking to me for approval. The words legacy systems whispered during strategy offsites. I had become furniture, a relic. I looked at the wine glass in my hand. I had built something. I had given them everything. My intuition, my hours, my name, and now someone else would sit in the chair I pulled from scratch and claim it as hers. I leaned back and let the silence press in. This wasn't just grief. It was mourning. Not for the job, for what I thought it meant. 2 days passed. I hadn't changed out of the same pair of linen joggers and a cotton tee, the kind I used to mock in startup mood boards. My phone was on silent, face down again. I was halfway through organizing my books by height when I finally flipped it over. 42 unread messages. Most of them were from people I hadn't spoken to in months. Clients, consultants, former collaborators. The one that made me pause was from Cassandra Wynn. I stared at it for a second before opening it. The name alone carried weight. Cassandra had once been a hair's breadth from a full-on PR collapse over labor allegations in Peru, and I had walked her through redesigning her entire global flagship hotel strategy in 3 sleepless weeks. She never forgot that. The message was simple. Elle, tell me this isn't true. If it is, let me be clear. They just made the biggest mistake of their careers. Call me. We need to talk. And when you're ready, I've got something better. I felt my throat tighten. It wasn't just Cassandra. I opened my inbox. There were messages from 5 other high-profile clients, names I'd personally landed for the firm, not inherited. Every message had the same tone: disbelief, concern, and an unspoken loyalty. They didn't say it directly, but it was there between the lines. If you land somewhere new, we're coming with you. And just like that, something in me cracked open. Not anger, not pride, validation. I wasn't obsolete. I wasn't some fading institution politely phased out to make room for glossy new ambition. I was still relevant, essential, operational. I stood and paced the room, heart pounding. The grief didn't vanish, but it shifted. It stopped being a weight and started becoming something sharper, something useful. At noon, my phone buzzed again, this time from Nina, my former executive assistant. I picked up. Hey! There was no greeting, just urgency. They're losing it, Elle. I blinked. What? I thought you should know. Dominic's in full damage control mode. Amaya's first internal call was a train wreck. She forgot the firm code on the call sheet. A partner walked out 10 minutes in. I ran a hand through my hair. Jesus! That's not even it. 2 key clients have already asked to be reassigned. HR's trying to frame it as a leadership transition, but no one's buying it. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Nina continued, her voice low. People are scared. You leaving, the way it happened, it didn't feel right. You were the backbone. Everyone knew it. Now it's chaos. I appreciate you telling me, I said quietly. Elle, she said, hesitating. If you go somewhere, let me know. I'd follow you in a heartbeat. I stared out the window, past the skyline, past the buildings I had helped shape. Thanks, Nina, I said. That means more than you know. After we hung up, I sat for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started making a list. Not of grievances, of leverage. It was just after midnight when my phone rang. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in nearly a year, Victor Hale. I let it go to voicemail. Then I stared at the screen for a minute before I hit play. Elle, it's Victor. I heard. I don't know what to say, except I'm sorry. I didn't sign off on this. Dominic didn't consult me, not really. I'm overseas at the moment, but I'd like to speak when you have time. I didn't call him back right away. I brushed my teeth. I paced. I opened the fridge and closed it again. When I finally returned his call, it was nearly 12:40 a.m. His voice came through tinny, probably somewhere in southern France or Italy, where he liked to recover from capitalism, as he put it. Elle, he said, almost breathless with relief. Thank you for calling. Look, I want to make this right. I said nothing. I know how this must feel, he continued. It's wrong. You built this firm. You are the firm. Apparently not anymore, he sighed. There's a lot of pressure from investors. You know how Dominic is. Sleek, quick decisions, very McKinsey-coded. I stepped back, and maybe I stepped back too far. You let them gut the soul of the place, I said plainly. You let it rot. I know, and I want to fix it. I've spoken to the board informally. They're open to a compromise. What if we offered you a transitional advisory title? Founder in residence, perhaps? Prestige, access to your projects, minimal hours, generous compensation. It would help stabilize the perception, show continuity. You mean slap my name on the website while Amaya plays pretend? He hesitated. Elle, that's not fair. It's exactly fair, I cut in. You don't want me back. You want my reputation back. That's not true, he said too quickly. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. You want to parade me in front of clients, patch the holes with my credibility, and hide the fact that you let Dominic and his army of consultants drive the company off a cliff. Silence on his end. A long one. Finally, he said, Then what do you want? Not this, I said. Not a desk in the corner and a nice title to keep the wolves from the door. I'm not coming back to make you feel better. Elle, we were partners, friends. No, I said. You were a visionary once. You believed in integrity. But now, you're just another man hoping the woman you betrayed will clean up the mess without making it look like one. I heard him exhale, slow and pained. Good luck, Victor, I said, soft but steady. You'll need it. Then I ended the call, not with bitterness, but with clarity. The cafe was quiet, tucked into the corner of a garden-level building in Tribeca. Warm wood, no music, just the clink of ceramic and the occasional whisper of steam from the espresso machine. The kind of place you only found if someone told you about it. Marissa Trent was already seated when I arrived, long black coat draped over the back of her chair, tablet open but untouched. She stood to greet me, firm handshake, direct eye contact, the kind of poise you couldn't fake. I hope you don't mind the spot, she said. I figured you'd appreciate somewhere off-grid. Perfect, I said, settling in. And quiet. She smiled knowingly. Everyone's been trying to reach you. I figured. The server came and went. 2 lattes, no sugar. Then Marissa leaned forward, elbows on the table. Let's skip the small talk, she said. You've been silent for 3 days, which tells me you're deciding whether to disappear or reemerge. I'm here to nudge you toward the latter. I tilted my head. You've been talking to clients? I didn't have to, she replied. They called me, some of your oldest ones. Your name's moving through the circuit like a rumor, but the good kind. I raised an eyebrow. I'm not exactly marketable right now. She chuckled. You're not marketable, Elle. You're magnetic. There's a difference. I sipped my coffee. Dominic would disagree. Dominic, she said, rolling her eyes, is a spreadsheet in a suit. No one's following him into battle. I smirked despite myself. Marissa tapped on her tablet and turned it toward me. A short list of firm logos I knew well. Big names, design powerhouses. They all reached out. No pitch, no strings. One of them, Kelbridge Collective, didn't even ask your rate. They just said, and I quote, whatever she wants. I blinked. You're serious? As a coronary, she said. They don't see you as damaged goods. They see you as gravitational. The word landed hard. Gravitational. Not retired, not legacy, not symbolic. Gravitational. Marissa folded her hands. They know what you are, Elle, and so do you. You didn't get cast off. You got released. There's a difference. You're not scrambling to stay relevant. You're being hunted. I looked down at the list. One name stood out, not because it was bolded, but because it wasn't. Kelbridge. I'd admired them for years. Lean, clean leadership, a culture that didn't reek of politics or PowerPoint, and if they were offering without limits. This wasn't about bouncing back. This was about pivoting forward. I sat back in my chair, letting the thought take shape. I'm not interested in playing safe, I said finally. If I re-enter, it won't be to fit in someone else's vision. Marissa's eyes gleamed. Good, because they're not asking you to join a team. She leaned in. They're asking you to define one. Kelbridge's offices were like something out of a different era. Not the past, but the one we thought we were building 10 years ago. Clean lines, no marble, no pretension. Just glass, light, and quiet. Every step I took through the corridor felt intentional. Cleo Sandwell was waiting for me in a corner office with a view of the skyline. She stood as I entered, tall and poised, her gray curls pulled back in a low twist. She wore a navy pantsuit that said she didn't need to prove anything. Elle, she said, extending a hand. It's about time, I smiled. Apologies for the delay. I had to figure out what I wanted before I sat down. I'd expect nothing less. We shook hands and sat opposite each other. No entourage, no slideshow. Just 2 women who had spent enough time navigating boardrooms to know when one wasn't necessary. Cleo nodded at me to begin. So? I don't want a position, I said plainly. I want a mission. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her eyes sharpen with interest. I've thought about it, I continued. The firm I helped build isn't failing because of revenue loss or poor deliverables. It's rotting from the inside. The culture is broken. The foundation's been eaten away by ego, short-termism, and what I can only describe as aesthetic opportunism. She didn't interrupt. I don't want to return to fix it. I want to acquire it. Cleo leaned back, arms crossed loosely, waiting. I've mapped out the key partners who jump ship with the right signal. There's internal discontent. Clients are already whispering. If we move within the next 90 days, it can be done cleanly. Minimum PR blowback, maximum impact. And after? She asked. I rebuild it, not the way it was, the way it should have been. A design house with actual values, transparency, integrity, purpose-driven instead of optics-driven, a place where people want to stay. She was quiet for a long moment, then said, You're proposing a hostile reacquisition dressed in empathy. I'm proposing clarity, I replied, and a chance to prove that cultural capital is worth investing in. Cleo nodded slowly. You have the strategy. You have the leverage. You even have the redemption arc. But there's one condition. I waited. You don't join as a fixer or a figurehead. You lead, full authority. Founding partner. I blinked. Founding? You build the arm, she said. We call it new. We're not restoring anything. We're reinventing it, from the bones out, but only if you're willing to own it. I stared at her. I thought about all the years I spent carrying someone else's vision like it was sacred text. All the nights I stayed late rewriting proposals because a junior didn't understand the weight of a site plan. All the lunches I skipped to sit through funding meetings that had nothing to do with design. This wasn't a return. This was authorship. I'm in, I said. Cleo smiled. Then let's build something better. They called it a strategy visibility session, a monthly all-hands meeting, usually peppered with slide decks, safe language, and carefully curated optimism. Today's was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp, third-floor auditorium. The same room where I'd once presented our award-winning Phoenix Community Housing Project to a standing ovation. I arrived at 10:05, late on purpose. The glass doors at the back of the auditorium swung open with a soft hiss, and every head in the room turned. For a second, no one moved. Dominic Rice froze mid-sentence, his slide behind him bearing the word momentum. A few people actually gasped. I walked down the center aisle slowly, methodically, in heels. The sound echoed louder than I expected. Dominic recovered fast. Elle, he said tightly into the mic, this isn't the... I'm not here to disrupt, I said, cutting across the room with my voice alone. I'm here to clarify. I reached the front and turned to face the staff. Not the leadership, not Dominic. The staff. My name is Eleanor Marsh. Most of you know me. For those who don't, I co-founded this firm back when our office was above a bakery in Brooklyn, and our biggest asset was a secondhand plotter. Nervous laughter rippled. I was removed 6 weeks ago in what was described as a vision alignment. A few people looked down, some winced. But as of today, I continued, Eversage Design is no longer under its previous ownership structure. A murmur swept the room. Dominic's face drained of color. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Kelbridge Collective has officially acquired controlling interest in the firm. Effective immediately. Now the reaction came. Gasps, whispers, visible shock. In the second row, someone whispered, "No way," to their neighbor. I turned toward Dominic. And with that, Dominic Rice is relieved of his duties. Effective immediately. He opened his mouth, then closed it. No defense, no speech. Just the sound of his own failure catching up to him. Security was already briefed. He gathered his things and walked out without protest. The door clicked shut behind him. I turned back to the staff, letting the silence settle. I'm not here to restore the old days, I said. They weren't perfect. And frankly, nostalgia is a poor architect. A few heads nodded. But we lost something along the way. We let strategy override soul. We let posturing override purpose. That ends today. I walked to the edge of the stage. From now on, this firm will operate with 3 values at its core: transparency, empathy, and dignity. No one in this room will be blindsided like I was. No one will have to wonder if they belong. Someone in the back clapped, then another, and then the room erupted. Applause, real and loud and lasting. It wasn't polite, it was cathartic. I stood there, letting it wash over me, not as an ego boost, but as a signal. They had been waiting for someone to say what they couldn't. When it quieted, I finished. This isn't a return, it's a reset. We're not going back, we're going forward, together. You have a seat at the table, every single one of you. I stepped off the stage and into the crowd, not as a ghost of leadership, but as its architect. We met in one of the smaller conference rooms, the one with no windows and bad overhead lighting. Fitting, I thought. It didn't deserve grandeur. Victor Hale sat at the table, his once effortless charm worn thin. He looked older than I remembered, paler, not just from age, but from relevance slipping through his fingers. He stood when I walked in. "L," I nodded. "Victor." There was a silence. Not awkward. Intentional. He gestured toward the chair across from him. I sat. "I read the terms," he said, tapping the folder in front of him like it might disappear if he looked away. "You're offering me a consultant title. No control, no voice on the board, no project influence." "Yes," I said simply. "This is ceremonial," he said, almost a whisper. "It's symbolic," I replied. "You want it to be remembered. This allows that, without compromising what comes next." His jaw tightened. "I gave this firm its name. I gave it its soul," I said, calm but direct. "You walked away when it still needed you. And when it didn't, you came back only to preserve your name, not its people." He flinched. "That's not fair." "Maybe not," I said, "but it's honest." He leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, staring at the folder like it might change if he looked long enough. "So this is how it ends," he muttered. "No," I said. "This is how it's remembered. With clarity, not fiction." His eyes flicked up to meet mine. "You could have stripped me out of the history entirely." "I considered it," I said, not cruelly, just truthfully. "But I'm not interested in revenge, Victor. I'm interested in accuracy. You started something meaningful. You just didn't protect it." He looked away. "This feels like punishment." "It's preservation," I replied, "but not of your control, of your legacy. Clean, dignified, quiet." He didn't speak for a long time. The ticking of the wall clock suddenly felt louder than it should have. Finally, he slid the folder toward himself, flipped to the last page, and signed. No dramatic sigh, no tantrum, just ink on paper. He closed the folder and stood. "I suppose you'll want the transition announcement drafted." "No," I said, standing too. "It'll be handled. You'll be listed with gratitude. A founding visionary, a respected mentor." He scoffed faintly. "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything," I said. "The story has to end somewhere, Victor. Better it ends with quiet truth than loud fiction." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but didn't. Instead, he nodded once and left the room. I stayed behind. The silence was different this time, not uncomfortable. Just clean. I picked up the folder and slipped it into my bag. That chapter was done, and the story, finally, was mine alone to write. 6 months later, the firm didn't feel like the same place. The walls were still glass, the branding still sleek, but the energy, God, the energy was different. No more tense silence in meetings. No more calendar alignment sessions that were really just panic in disguise. The undercurrent of fear had been replaced with something else. Trust. Real, palpable trust. I walked the floor every morning now, not because I had to, but because people actually wanted to talk. A design associate pulled me aside to show off a new sustainable facade detail. A junior planner asked if we could test a shadowing rotation for interns. The head of admin told me HR was getting more voluntary feedback than ever before. It wasn't performative anymore. People weren't clinging to buzzwords or tiptoeing around Dominic-style landmines. They were honest, open, engaged. In our last Culture Council meeting, a group I created made up of rotating staff from every level. Someone suggested replacing annual reviews with project-based reflections. I said yes before the sentence was finished. Why not? If we were rebuilding, we were doing it with everyone's fingerprints on the walls. One afternoon, I passed Amaya's old office. It had been converted into a wellness nook. Plants, books, and a real window. Someone had added a sign that read, "Design your pause." I didn't ask who, I just smiled. Client relationships, once on life support, were recovering fast. Cassandra Wynn had already signed 2 new projects with us, and 5 more former clients returned without prompting. Our proposals were getting faster turnarounds, not because we were underpricing, we weren't, but because the tone had changed. People wanted to work with us again. Even our pitch decks were different. No more over-designed fluff, just honest, compelling stories about spaces that mattered. We didn't try to sound bigger than we were. We tried to sound like us. And it was working. Turnover? Practically stopped. One staff member who'd given their notice last year asked to come back. We said yes. Of course we did. Because this place wasn't built on one person anymore. It wasn't just mine. And it wasn't just legacy. It was a living thing now. At the latest staff-wide meeting, I stood beside 2 junior team leads who walked everyone through our new mentorship program. I barely said a word. They didn't need me to. That night, as I left the office, I passed by the big wooden wall where we'd started a tradition. Everyone who stayed through the transition got a peg, a carved wood piece with their name inserted by hand. I ran my fingers along the rows, smooth, real, human. This wasn't just a firm anymore. It resonated. Not because we said the right things in our brochures, but because we lived them, because people could breathe, because no one had to look over their shoulder before speaking, because feedback was welcomed, not weaponized. I had spent decades chasing perfection. But this was better. It was alive. We sat at a corner table in a quiet bistro tucked just off Fifth Avenue, the kind of place with real linens and a wine list that didn't come with translations. Cassandra Wynne had insisted on dinner, celebratory, non-negotiable, and after 6 months of rebuilding, I didn't have the energy to argue. She raised her glass. To Elle Marsh, architect, fire starter, and now, something beyond all that. I smiled. You forgot, janitor. I've been mopping up messes for half a year. She laughed, sharp and warm. You make it look easy. It wasn't. We clinked glasses. The wine was a Burgundy I couldn't pronounce but thoroughly enjoyed. Cassandra had always had good taste, better than me even, and she had a way of making luxury feel earned rather than flaunted. Be honest, she said, leaning in. Was it worth it? I swirled my glass slowly, watching the legs trail down. At first, I thought I was doing it to prove a point, that I wasn't disposable, that they'd made a mistake. And now? Now, I said, setting the glass down, it's not about proving anything. It's about building something I don't have to defend. Cassandra nodded. That's legacy. I shrugged lightly. It's strange. When they fired me, I thought I'd never recover. I thought I'd lost my identity. You hadn't, she said. They just mislabeled it. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the low murmur of the room around us. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual urgency, but in here, everything felt slow, peaceful. I used to think revenge would feel better, I admitted. There were moments early on where I wanted to crush them, humiliate them like they did me, replace every executive and tear the walls down. And you didn't? Oh, I did some of it, I said, smiling faintly. But the satisfaction didn't come from the collapse. It came from what grew after. Cassandra raised an eyebrow. So the villain origin story never quite took off. I laughed. Turns out I wasn't the villain, just the editor. That got a chuckle from her. I glanced down at the half-eaten plate in front of me, then back up at her. What they did to me, it wasn't a one-off. It's systemic. It's in how we talk about leadership, about value, about age even. They thought younger meant fresher, sharper, cheaper. And they forgot about gravity. Exactly. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. I didn't win because I got my job back. I won because I redefined what power looks like and who gets to hold it. Cassandra lifted her glass again, and this time I joined her without hesitation. To rooms you built, she said. And rooms I reimagined, I added. The glasses touched, no explosion, no final twist, just a quiet, steady peace. The kind that comes when you stop asking for a seat at someone else's table and start building your own.